On today's episode, I'm going to dive into one of the biggest debates from Bulls fans going on here, and that is Caleb Wilson, Cam Boozer, and Darius Acuff, right? And so what we're going to do here with today's episode is I'm going to talk about the reasons for, the reasons against drafting each of those three players and how it affects the rebuild potential with each of those three players. So we're going to do a deep dive into that, even though I don't think this should be a conversation, but a lot of Bulls fans are very interested in what building with Darius Acuff could be like in comparison to Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Plus, it's Saturday. That means it is Mailbag Day. We will be getting into your voicemails. All that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. So yesterday, the Chicago Bulls worked out Darius Acuff, right? And the way that I look at it is this, is that the Bulls and Bryson Graham are doing their full due diligence to get everything that they can in order, right? To make sure that they have all the draft information possible before they make a selection at pick number 4 overall. And that just makes sense, right? You don't want to, and like I said on the episode yesterday, the live stream, is that Bryson Graham said this. While it looks like a top 4 draft where you're looking at those 4 guys, you don't want to get so caught up in that you may miss something. And that's really what this comes down to, I think, for the Chicago Bulls. They are just trying to make sure that they do not potentially miss somebody that could be a star, and they just say, well, we didn't look at them because they were a top 4 pick. But with that said, right, like, could the Bulls really go outside the top 4, right? I think that this is, and per what we heard from KC Johnson, this is a 4-player draft. Those 4 players are there. The 4 players are AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, and Caleb Wilson. That's it, right? Now, Darius Acuff, as what he did scoring-wise, what he did as a lead guard-wise, there's there, right? But at number 4, the Chicago Bulls need to think about fit, floor, offensive upside, defensive upside, and star power, right? That's what you have to look at in regards to that. We do not have a clear alpha on this team yet. We just do not. We are still trying to find that clear alpha, and I don't think we will ever have the upward success until we get that guy. So the question is does Bryson Graham want the cleanest roster build, right? The cleanest way to build forward, or the biggest offensive swing? And I think that's what it comes down to with these players. Darius Acuff is the biggest offensive swing in this one, and he could be one of those dynamic guards that score crazily. Of course, there's questions about his defensive side of the ball. So let's get into it now that we've prefaced it enough. Oh, by the way, hit that subscribe button. Trying to get to 50,000 subscribers by the start of the 2026-27 season. We can only do that with you guys helping. There's about 42% of you guys that watch the daily episodes that are not subscribed to the channel. So my question is, what you doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You're here every day anyway. Stop freeloading. With that said, let's get into it. So the case for Darius Acuff at number 4, right? I think when you look at Darius Acuff, the true lead guard potential that he has there, the offensive engine, Darius Acuff could be the engine of your offense. He averaged 23.5 points per game, 6.4 assists, 3.1 rebounds, and those assist numbers realistically could go up because he was on the team with another really solid passer. He shot 48.4% from the field and 44% from 3. He is a legitimate 3-level scorer that has tons of potential, right? He became the first SEC player since Pete Maravich to lead the league in scoring and assist, right? And that's the reality of it. Now, is there a world in which you can draft Darius Acuff and still keep Josh Giddey? I mean, weirder things have happened. I think you have a more passing guard and then a scoring guard, but the defense is going to be a thing there, right? Like, we know offensively, I think that Josh Giddey can work with just about anybody. Defensively, though, we've seen it, right? When you have backcourts that are such defensive limitations and liability, it makes it so much harder on the other 3 players on the court with those guys any point in time, right? We know that Modest Buzelis is also developing as a scorer, a 2-way forward, but you still need somebody who can create offense by himself, a one-man creating team, and that could be Darius Acuff. Like, he would give the Bulls a huge pick and roll creation, late clock. I think he's going to have that clutch gene as well, and of course for markability as well, guards. You can always market guards, right? If you draft Darius Acuff, you're not drafting for fit. You're drafting for offensive firepower and hierarchy. That's what you're doing. The case against Darius Acuff there, it just comes down to this. The offensive ceiling is crazy. But the defensive build becomes so much harder with a player like that. At 6'3", 190 pounds, the size, the defensive impact, and the NBA scoring translation are valid concerns, and that's what you hear throughout most draft experts that talk about Darius Acuff. Now, is he going to be able to overcome some of those? Absolutely. The size is always going to be a thing for him, but it's not like we haven't seen, like, Trey Jones is a very small point guard, but he's defensively a monster because he gives effort. The question that always becomes about, right, is how much of a player is not a good defensive weapon because they just haven't been coached to it. Much like Kobe White, when Peter Patton first came in here and Kobe White said, I've always been so good of a shooter and a scorer, nobody ever really stopped, slowed down, and really taught me how to refine my shot mechanics. Maybe in the NBA, we saw Anthony Edwards do that, right? Like, maybe in the NBA, once he realizes, hey, I got to become a I can't be a one-way player, maybe he buys into that. But it's just a tall test, and usually it does not happen, right? I think you would then need everybody else. You would need Modest Buzelis to become a really high-level defensive forward. You need that switchable big that we talked about there, and you need somebody at the 4 as well who's gonna do that. Darius Acuff would be the flash-in-the-pan sexy pick. It just is the reality of it. He will give you somebody with star upside that will be fun to watch and get the fans involved, but that doesn't always mean that the rebuild's cleaner, right? That leads us to the next one. Cameron Boozer may be the easiest, as far as the cleanest rebuild guy there, right? He would give the Chicago Bulls structure and production immediately, averaging 22 points, 10.2 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 55.6% from the field, a solid three-point shooter as well. He would bring scoring, rebounding, passing, physicality, and front court stability. You still need to find that long-term center to go with him, but it will give you that, right? He can play with Josh Giddey. He can play with Modest Buzelis. He can play with Trey Jones. He can play with Noah Essengay if he develops. Like, that is the type of multi-function player that Cam Boozer is. He can function as a post scorer. He can be the short roll passer. He can be a rebounder. He can create out on the elbow in the hub right there. He can be a secondary creator to your point guard, whoever that is, right? And so the question is can he be a true number one option, or is he just a really solid player that ends up being absolutely contributing to winning? That is the question when it comes down to Cam Boozer, right? Cam Boozer makes the rebuild easier because you don't have to guess what he is. You know what Cam Boozer is. He's ultimately been talked about the guy with the highest floor and maybe the lower ceiling in this, but I think that just means because he's more realized as an NBA player right now. That is the reality of it, right? So when you look at the case for that, the scoring, the rebounding, the passing, the physicality, the front court ability, the high basketball IQ, Boozer makes the rebuild easier because he gives you a structure. That's the reality of it. And when you look about the concerns around Cam Boozer, it's simply just the ceiling defensively. He was a really solid defender at the next level. He's not explosive. He's not twitchy. He's not an above the rim athlete, right? And so that's why if he does fall to 4, that is why he would fall. But I think when you look at it, he's so powerful and polished that you maybe expect some of that to overcome, right? So the question becomes does he actually change the culture with Chicago, or is he just a piece that is going to be really good at winning? Then we get to the Caleb Wilson part of this. Caleb Wilson may be the best blend of any of these 3 guys at upside, length, versatility, and two-way play. Averaging 19.8 points per game, top 40 in the nation, 9.4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.4 blocks, while shooting 57% from the field. He became the only player in ACC history to average at least those numbers in a single season. The star profile is there. The modern forward profile is there. He gives you finishing, rebounding, defensive playmaking, weak side rim protection, ability in trancing, and I say this, there's some flashes with his passing there that he can end up being a solid passer as well. Caleb Wilson may not be the loudest pick in this, but it may end up being the easier player to build with because he fits every version of modern basketball, and that's the reality of it, right? He fits every single version of modern basketball. And that's there. The case against Caleb Wilson is, is he able to become a true offensive centerpiece, right? Now, you draft a player at number 4, even if they're your best player, you want them to kind of be the focal point of your offense. Is he going to do that, right? He's productive. His creation profile is not as obvious as Darius Acuff's, not as obvious as Cam Boozer, right? He also missed the final 9 games after hand injuries, which, if that's a concern for you, right? If you are drafting Caleb Wilson, the question becomes about, can he become a star, or is he just a star role player? At the very worst, a star role player or an actual star. That's the thing between it. So when you look at the difficulty in rebuilding, Cam Boozer gives you the easiest rebuild path. It's just the reality of it. He's the easiest player to start a rebuild with because he gives you production, size, rebounding, passing, scoring, and he's going to be an active defender. He's not a mystery. You know who Cam Boozer's going to be. He has the safest foundation of turning into a star of anyone with this one. But he may not end up being that elite star, right? Caleb Wilson, he gives you the cleanest modern fit. He gives you the length. He gives you the defense. He gives you the two-way ability. He gives you that can fit almost any need. No matter where the Bulls roster goes, Caleb Wilson can be a player. That's why I'm so high on if we get Caleb Wilson and Cameron Carr. Two players that can fit no matter how you want to build, that adds so much flexibility to your team. The question then becomes about, is the ceiling too low offensively? I don't personally think it is. I think the shot mechanics were wonky or bad, I'd probably feel a little bit more negative on that, but I'm not worried about that. And then you have Darius Acuff, right? He brings you the highest offensive swing, but it could also be the hardest to build around. Right now, you can build an offense around it, but we've seen it. If you have a one-way player as your best player, it can get very dangerous to build with. He gives you the clearest path for a star lead guard and an offensive action, a huge firepower there, right? And the Bulls need a franchise shot creator, and Darius Acuff could end up bringing that. The concern with him comes about the Bulls are already bad defensively, and Darius Acuff does nothing for that to fix anything in regards to that for defense. So when you look at it, it's simple as this. If Cam Boozer there at number 4, it's going to be very hard to pass on him because he just is the floor is so high for him there that at minimum, he's going to be an elite forward in this league. Now, does that mean an elite star? Not necessarily, right? If Cam Boozer is gone, Caleb Wilson versus Darius Acuff becomes the philosophy for a lot of Bulls fans. And if you want the cleanest roster build, in my personal opinion, it's Caleb Wilson. If you want the biggest offensive swing, it's going to be Darius Acuff. Now, again, like I said with all this, take it with a grain of salt. I don't think the Bulls are going to go anywhere outside the top 4, but I wanted to have this conversation. So many of you guys have been asking about it. And as you guys know, I say you are a bigger part of this show as me. So I have to talk about a lot of what you guys want to. But let me know what you guys think on all that down below, how I laid it out, and what do you think it means for the Chicago Bulls. But let's move on, right? Let's get into these voicemails that we have, man. This one's from Broadway K.
Haize, good guy. This is Broadway K. On Twitter, I'm at Lord of the Squad. This is my plan for what you guys should do in the draft. I think at number 4, you take Caleb Wilson. I don't think it's a chance the Grizzlies are going to not take Boozer. At 15, you're going to take Cam Carr. I don't believe you're going to have to trade up. I think Braden Berries is still going to get drafted over Cam Carr. And I think one of the guards like Phylon is just going to go ahead of him just based off team need. And I think what you should do after that is, depending on if Steinbach is still available at 18, then I think you should use your second-round picks to move up and take Steinbach or Kristen Nick Jr. If you don't trade up, then I think you just throw the bag at Walker Kessler. And I do think you trade Isaac Okoro for some type of shooter, think in the Corey Kispert realm. Then you'll be working with a core of Josh Giddey, Cam Carr, Modest Buzelis, Caleb Wilson, Walker Kessler, Trey Jones, Colin Sexton, Corey Kispert, Zach Collins, and one of Steinbach or Kristen Nick Jr. So that's my plan for you guys. Just address the rim protection and, a bigger wing and someone that can protect the rim, like Walker Kessler. So that's my plan for you guys. Lord of the Squad, I'm up.
You know how I feel about when people lay out offseason plans like this? It's rarely realistic or it works out that way. And that's not to say that you didn't put in some really good thought process in it. I think it's more well thought out than some people, do when they have these kind of pie in the sky things. But here's the thing. The Bulls are going to have a ton of options at number 15. And I think if they don't trade up, they're still going to get a guy that they can build with. Now, I think there's also an option for the Bulls to trade up from number 15 and get somebody that they want to target. And that becomes the question there. As far as the free agency part of it, we really can't say that until we get into free agency, until we get through the draft. The draft is so important to the positions that we draft that I don't really feel comfortable. And even like Walker Kessler, the Utah Jazz seem like they're locked in with keeping him, and they very well may do that. So it may mean that no matter what the Bulls do, they can't get a guy like that. So we'll see what ends up happening here. But the Bulls just need to find the players that they target, that they feel that they want to build with, and they can have the most likely scenario to work out. And that's just the reality. All right, let's get into this next voicemail, man. This one's from Vikram.
What's up, Haize? It's Vikram. I just wanted to talk to you about two things that I just randomly thought about. So one thing is, like, with this new lottery reform and Bryson Graham being the guy, you kind of had, like, Michael Reinsdorf was talking about getting ahead of the bell curve. I was kind of thinking about, like, things Bryson Graham could utilize and how he could, like, get ahead of the bell curve. And I think one thing that really becomes a lot more valuable, or, like, the difference between these two things it changes a lot, is getting a first-round pick versus getting a first-round pick swap in a draft, in a trade, sorry. And I think basically what it used to, because back in the, like, even in this draft, like, you wouldn't expect that Pelicans pick that went to the Hawks. You didn't really think that the Bucks part of it was going to jump up. Like, there's better odds that the Hawks one jumps up, or the Pelican side. But if Bryson Graham could really evaluate like how strong getting swaps are now, maybe since it could, like, theoretically, I don't know, math like stuff, like analytically it evaluates like two swaps are worth one first round pick or something now. Like, maybe if he starts going after swaps, that could be something pretty cool. Like, maybe that could show, like, oh, this guy's, like, ahead of the bell curve, like, and it pays off. Like, maybe next year we get the number one pick because we swapped with, like, the Orlando Magic who were in the play-in, and now they jumped up and we got their part of the swap. So yeah, like, something like that. Another thought I had was, what if we traded, like, and we took on Emmanuel Quickly's bad contract, got, like, a Grady Dick or something, and, like a swap, like I mentioned, and traded away Trey Jones. They obviously need, like, some point guard play, and Emmanuel Quickly's salary isn't the best. It could help them offload some salary, and we could get, like, a young guard prospect who's, like, 24, 25, around our timeline. Also get Grady Dick and a pick swap. Grady Dick hasn't done much, so we could maybe take a flyer on him. But also, it isn't, like, too expensive of a contract in Emmanuel Quickly where we can't make, like, a restricted free agent signing. And we get, like, maybe, like, a first-round swap or a whole pick from it. I don't know. Let me know what you think on that. Like, could it be a cool, interesting idea?
Pick swaps are dangerous because of this, Vikram. It's that, like, yeah, it's if it works out for you, great. But if your pick ends up being better than that pick swap, then you've made a trade and really have got no asset. That's why I almost would rather, even if it's a protected pick, to get the pick if it's guaranteed to be something for you, because then you get an additional asset. Pick swaps don't really turn into additional assets. They can be better assets, but I think sometimes in what we see around the NBA, it's about the number of assets that you have. Because if you have 2 first-round picks in 2027, you could possibly move up to get the pick that you want in 2027. Whereas if you have a pick swap, you're still just left with one pick. You may be able to take the better pick out of it, but let's say the picks end up being like 15 and 17. It's not really a huge leap. Whereas you have 2, even if you have 17 and 20, you may be able to package that to move up into the lottery, right? So that's kind of my mindset in it. Not to say that you are incorrect for how you view it, because it could still, there are absolutely situations where the pick swap ends up working out for you. Look at how we got Joakim Noah, pick swap, right? Pick swap in that case, and it worked out for us. So it definitely can go either way with it. It's just my own mentality is, let's stack the deck. Let's get the most assets possible. My personal opinion. All right, let's get into this next one, man. This one's from our brother Corn.
What's the good word, King Drip? It's your brother Corn, man. Let's get right into this shit, man. Hey, man. Woo. I want to talk about the coaches, right? We'll talk about the coaches later, man, but we got a lot to dive into, man. I want to dive into what people been talking about, not the number 4, but the number 15. I got 2 guys. And I feel like one can fall to us. One is Cameron Carr. We all are familiar with Cameron Carr. Okay? Now, Cameron Carr, nice wing, do his thing. So we know a lot about Cameron Carr. Now, let's talk about the other kid that I want out of the University of Texas. 6'7" wing himself, shooting guard Dalen Swin. Now, I don't know if people have speaked on Dalen Swin. You know what I'm saying? I haven't been up on shit like I usually be. If y'all been speaking on them, my apologies. But I'm speaking on my two prospects. You know, I'm back from out of town, so now shit is go get back together with this, you know, business got back in order. So let's get back in order with this. So, you know, I would rather have Cameron Carr. Let's get that, let's get that straight. Number 15, Cameron Carr falls to us. Please swing it. You know, I want us to have a good number two, a nice two guard, a nice wing now, you know, since Io and Kobe is out the way. So that number 15 pick, I'm looking for a wing. And then I'm looking for us to trade back in to the first. Or we can still wait at number 38. And I'm going to give you that pick a little bit later on. That's a little bit deep, you know what I mean? He comes from Italy, 7'3" kid. But like I said, we can talk about that another time. We'll talk about the second round later. But if we could get Cameron Carr or Dalen Swin at number 15, hey man, sky's the limit. Man, I've been thirsty for basketball since, you know, saying these whack ass Knicks look like they about to win. Fucking, I know I hate these motherfuckers, man. But it is what it is. It is what it is. So, you know, I'm just looking at this team.
Cameron Carr and Dalen Swain are both really solid options at 15 for sure. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Both those guys are really solid options. I don't think that Swain is the off-ball player that Cameron Carr is, but it doesn't mean that he's a bad option, right? I don't think he's a bad option at all, but I think most Bulls fans at this point have fallen in love with the potential of Cameron Carr, which probably means he's not going to be the pick there. Like, there's so many mocks at him going to the Bulls. Like, I would love for it to happen. If the Bulls get Cameron Carr, I think they got a really good pick there. But I also have been a Bulls fan for a long time, and I know things don't always work out the way that even some of the professionals think that it's going to work out. We just got to see how it's going to go for our team. But very solid voicemail. And shout out to you, Corn. I'm glad you had the vacation to reset. Hopefully your mind's right, bro. You already know, call me if you need anything. I love you, man. But we'll see what the Bulls end up doing at 15. All right, let's get into this next one, man. This one's from Doug.
Hey, Haize, this is Doug. I was wondering what your thoughts was on us being able to get the 25th pick from the Lakers. At last year's trade deadline, there was rumored that they was interested in Isaac Okoro, and according to yesterday's Locked On Bulls, that rumor is still floating around, I guess. So maybe there's some truth to it. I know just Isaac Okoro, even if you throw in both of our second-round picks, probably isn't enough to get that first-round pick from the Lakers. But what if you also threw in Jalen Smith? That would give the Lakers two good defensive forwards to put behind Luka and Austin Reeves. Jalen Smith could also play some five, and Isaac Okoro could also play some shooting guard if need be. But that would give the Bulls a third first-round pick. We would be leaning pretty heavily on Leonard Miller and Noah Essengay and I guess Patrick Williams to be backups to whoever we get at number 4 and Monas Buzelis. But let me know if you think that would be worth it for both sides, if you think that'd be something that could happen, or would we have to throw more second-round picks in or first-round pick swap, or is it not worth it at all for one or the other? But curious to hear what you think.
The Lakers are a weird one, right? Because I see where you're coming from, and maybe that pick could be available, but I'm gonna hit a counterpoint on this one. The Lakers need a big, and at pick number 25 in this draft, you can find a big that could potentially be perfect to pair with Luka and Austin Reeves. And it's gonna be, and because it's a low first, it's gonna be such a really cheap contract that, you know, they may not be willing to give that up. Now, let's say that they could be. They could also, you know, if their bigs that they want are off the board, they could be willing to move back from 38 to 25. May have to throw in a couple of extra seconds to add a sweetener into that, but they very well could be. There are a number of teams there that in the end of that first round that could look to move their pick. I do think it's going to depend on how the draft board falls, but there are a number of teams that could be looking to move on from their pick. We'll just see if Bryson Graham, how aggressive he wants to be about it and if they can get it done. But great voicemail there, Doug. Let's get into this last one for today, man. This one's from Will.
Yeah, hey, this is Will from the West Side. I'm liking Caleb Wilson with that fourth pick. I think maxed out, he could be lean bias 2.0. And I would really love to get Cameron Carr to stretch the wings at the number 15 pick. And if we can slide back into the first round, I would love to take Baba Miller from Cincinnati. That's a lengthy, athletic big man that can run court, block shots. And I guess that's my take. Thanks. Goodbye.
Caleb Wilson and Cam Carr would be a really good draft for the Bulls. At that point, your forward and your wings would be solidified. You got Cam Carr, Monas Buzelis, Caleb Wilson. That becomes solidified. You still need to find your big of the future, right? Baba Miller, like you said, is such an interesting option in that second round. Like, Baba Miller is somebody that if he ends up working out, I guarantee people are going to look back and say, how did this guy get to the lottery? Like, that's how good he could be. Doesn't mean that he will be, but that's how good he could be. He has all the kind of modern tools. If you walk away from this draft and come away with Caleb Wilson, Cam Carr, and Baba Miller, I think you've done pretty damn good in a draft like that. So, I'm not mad. He's one of the more interesting prospects there at the second. He could go at the end of the first, depending on how some of the boards fall and stuff like that. So he could go at the end of the first. But I wouldn't be mad at that being the draft selection at all for the Chicago Bulls if they decide to do that. Baba Miller, Trevon Brazile, like those are some of the guys that really stand out. Ryan Conwell at the guard position, if you don't go guard at number 15, is another guy that really stands out for me as well. I like those guys. There are a lot of guys in the second round that you can really fall in love with in this draft for sure, man. But that's going to do it for today, y'all. Thank you guys. Thank you for everybody who called in, left a voicemail there, man. Darius Acuff is not a crazy conversation to have. And if the Bulls want a true offensive engine, he may be the swing that some Bulls fans want to see you take. He gives you scoring, gives you creation, he gives you late in the game production as well. But like I said, it's about what makes your rebuild the cleanest. And I think Cameron Boozer and Caleb Wilson both make your rebuild a little bit easier, right? But I can say this, if you end up walking away with Darius Acuff and Cameron Carr, your backcourt could be solidified for years because Cameron Carr could be the perfect backcourt mate with Darius Acuff. And you got to figure out what you got to do with Josh Giddey. But I don't think that's where the stage that we're on. I don't think the Bulls are going to do that. I think you're going to pick the safest foundation with the biggest upside, and we're going to see where that leads us. But thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.